Good morning. Happy Saturday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Hope you're having great training days with your dog. Today I want to talk briefly about what's known as runaway syndrome. So what is runaway syndrome? Well, it's a condition in which we see many dogs, well over several hundred per year, dogs that are newly adopted from animal shelters. Within about the first 48 hours in their new home, they run away. They take off. And a lot of people are puzzled by that because, of course, you see in the pet industry. The pet industry is always trying to make you feel great, make you feel like a hero, make you feel like you're the savior, who rescued who, all these sort of things. So you see all these memes all the time where this dog is resting its head on your shoulder saying, thank you so much for saving me from that animal shelter, from saving me from that particular rescue, whatever. Or is it even a puppy? Thank goodness I'm getting away from all those brothers and sisters that I can't stand, and I'm finally getting into a home of my own. And that's what we think. And that's just part of being human. And we're bringing this dog home. We're getting it out of doggy jail, and we're going to bring it and give it the greatest life in the whole wide world. And then we're left brokenhearted and sad and befuddled when all of a sudden you look around and that dog that you thought you saved hightails it out of there and is gone. Well, what's happening here is a lot of people have tried to explain, but let me break it down here for you, tell you exactly what's happening here. In wildlife conservation efforts for many years now, for several decades, they perform what's called translocation. Now, translocation is where you take an animal from this part of its home range over here, and you transport it way away in its home range, so another area in it, and then release it. And that's so that, and the reason why that's done is because usually there's too much competition, overpredation of certain species, and it's just from a conservation standpoint, if you can just thin it out a little bit, here, you go over there, how about that? There's plenty of food over there, and you go over here, and you go over there, and we won't have so much fighting, and it'll just be a whole lot better. Distance creates safety in the wild. Distance creates, you'll get along. So that being said, translocation stuff has been done for many, many years. But here's what they have found out. When they release the majority of these animals in their new site, they run off too. Absolutely. They don't hang around. They will do what's called they will move rapidly away from the site, from the release site, often traveling great distances. And these great distances have a high mortality rate due to energy consumption. You start to decline in your health. It takes a lot of energy to travel at a high rate of speed. Also, you run the risk of encountering other competitors, meaning other wolves, other animals that are going, excuse me, you don't get to pass through here. And therefore, you get attacked by them. It's also just a sense in which these animals also get lost. They fall off of cliffs. You'd be surprised. This traveling long distance, not knowing where you are, has been associated with high mortality. So why do these animals in the wild do that? Well, we can only assume that they reject the release site. They don't want the release site. It's not a habitat that is familiar to them. And therefore, they run off trying to find that familiar habitat. In fact, what they're really looking for is their natal habitat. Post-dispersal, whenever wolves move away from their pack, and even documented dogs that formed dog packs over in Serbia and Croatia, it was noted that when the young dispersed away from their pack, they would try to set up a territory that was next to their natal pack. And this is known as natal habitat preference induction. Yeah, meaning if you grew up at home and while living at home, you learned how to hunt certain animals using certain strategies. You learned how to navigate through the land. You learn how to deal with the changing weather conditions at that home territory. You learned about how to avoid aggressive interactions with other competitors, alien wolves, alien dogs. You learn how to do this in your home. And therefore, that's why it's NHPI, again, natal habitat preference induction, is such an important part of dogs' behavior. And that's what a lot of our domestic dogs still go through. When you pull them out of that shelter, that was basically, depending on how long they were there or that rescue, That was their natal territory. And then when you pull them out, they want to go back to it. Think about yourself as a human. I mean, most of us yearn and at some point actually attempt to go back and live in the exact same area in which you grew up as a child. We have the same thing. We have natal habitat preference induction, just like animals do. These mountains here, no, this is not Alaska. My little southern bride, I don't think she could handle the winters in Alaska. And plus, we got family around this area. And so I had to get something kind of close. But look at me. I'm doing the same thing. I want to be in an environment in which I was raised. This is what makes me feel comfortable. I can navigate this land much better than I can a city. I know how to deal with the predators out here versus the ones in the city. I know where to find food out here. Heck, I have to dial it up and order it back in the city. I'm like a fish out of water in a city. Here, I'm home. I have a better chance of surviving here than I do there. And so that's what happens with our dogs. And it also affects puppies. Yeah, when you take that puppy away from its little natal pack, away from that home, and supplant it in your home, same thing. There's this driving force to get back to what you know, to what is familiar to you. And it drives these animals away. No matter how nice you are, no matter the great intentions that you have, there's survival value in getting back to the place that you know. And that's what drives these animals to do it. So what are scientists and conservation biologists, what are they doing to try and fix this, to make animals go, to accept their release site? Well, a lot of things they're doing is some things that you can do prior to bringing this dog home, whether it's an adult adopted dog or whether it's a puppy that you're going to bring home. And what these biologists are doing is that they are introducing odors, sounds, terrain objects that are going to be found at the release site. And they're doing it for several days before the animal is translocated to that new site. By making them familiar with these odors, with these sounds, with these articles, objects, maybe boulders, certain plants. They're trying to create the environment as best they can that is like the environment in which they took the animal from. And they have started doing that now for about the past 7 years, and it's been met with great success. A lot of the animals are not rejecting the release site. They're staying right there. They're hopping out of those little cages going, oh, okay, and I'm going to run a little bit so you guys can get a hold of me again. Yeah, they run out a little bit. They get away from you and get outside. But then they just stay in that area because there's familiarity. And again, we all thrive on it. You may have wanderlust. You may have all this adventurous spirit. But there's no place like home. Whatever home is for you, it's the same thing for your dog. No matter how young you are, you're imprinted to that. And that's the same. Same goes for us, same goes for our dogs. And so therefore, what Kira and I are doing, expecting the arrival of our new puppy, is we will be doing the same thing. Toys that are familiar to that puppy, we're going to have. Food for sure. Absolutely the same food. Sounds. Everything that we can do to replicate as best we can. Some things you won't be able to replicate. You're not going to replicate 8 other puppies unless you plan on bringing them all to your house. You're not going to do that. You're not going to replicate the sounds of an animal shelter. Unless you own one at your home. I meet some people and they have more dogs at their house than the local animal shelter does. But outside of that, the more you can do, these biologists, they were not able to completely and perfectly replicate the release site. They just had to get close. Obviously, close counts. And when they got close, it was enough for the animal to go ahead and say, okay, it ain't perfect. It's not home, but I think I can make do with it here. Let me just give it a little bit of time, see how all the stuff works out. And then they start to slowly adapt to that area. And then next thing you know, it becomes home. No different than you. Move to a new location. It's not home. But it's in Alaska. But it's close. And therefore, now it's starting to feel like home to me. Same thing goes for your dog. So that's what I advise. If you're going to adopt the dog from a rescue or from a shelter, do so well in advance, meaning talk to them, the rescue or the shelter, way in advance, a good week or two in advance. And just ask them, hey, give me a play-by-play. What's it like? What time does this dog get up? What time do you guys feed? What do you feed? When does it play? Who does it play with? Are there any toys involved? What does this dog seem to be afraid of? What does this dog seem to be attracted to? Yeah, be like an investigator. Write the stuff down. Then go back to your house and get busy. Go, okay, so I'm going to get these toys. I'm going to go ahead and order them right now because it could be delayed getting here. I'm going to get this food. Now, I don't like that food, but I'm going to feed it to it anyway. And what can we do about a play area? And what can we do about a playmate that's like this dog? What can we do? And all of that will help. Just get close and do the same thing with a puppy. And if you do, we'll cut down on the incidence of runaway syndrome. Because the bad thing about dogs is they're not as capable of taking care of themselves out there free as a wolf is, as a mountain lion, a bear. Any of these animals that are translocated to a new area, when they're released, they're more than capable of taking care of themselves unless they travel for great distances. And when I talk great distances, sometimes we're talking over 100 miles, easily. Sometimes even more than that, 200-300 miles away from the release site. And when that happens, and you're not eating along the way, a big predator like that with all that muscle, they lose weight so rapidly, and then they simply succumb to weather conditions, and they're attacked by other predators that see them as being weak. But at least they have a better chance than a dog who has to navigate through traffic, through cars, through creeks and rivers that they try to cross and find out, oh, you can't cross this river. Now, as soon as you get to the middle of it, you're gone. You're going to now be about 100 miles south on that river. A lot of things that can affect dogs that they just don't have that street savvy, that wild savvy that a lot of the wild animals do. So let's keep an eye on it. And nothing I'd recommend is that if you do adopt an older dog, because this runaway syndrome, this thing called natal habitat preference induction, it's real. It is very real. I would for at least the first 4 or 5 days be very vigilant. Keep an eye on that dog. Keep it restrained. Don't take anything for granted, because when you turn your head and you look this way, that's when they're gone. They're going to go. Keep an eye on them. Keep them close. Be that savior. Be that rescuer that you wanted to be. Don't let them get away from you again. Hey, they got picked up by you one time. They may not get a second chance at life. So do that. Do all the things I just told you about in this video. But that, guys, that's what causes runaway syndrome. This natural desire to go back to our natal land. The place where we grew up. The place where we learned things and we never forget them. The place that gives us more power, more confidence than any other place on earth. There's no place like home. And speaking of home, well, getting ready to hop in a vehicle and drive 8 hours. We're headed back to Memphis today, and I'll be back there for a week and a half, 2 weeks. Then I'm headed back up here in the mountains and going to try and get into some books here. Keep writing these darn books I'm writing. Hopefully you guys will enjoy them when they come out. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Got to get going. Enjoy the rest of your day. Just think about that natal habitat preference induction. It affects you, and it affects that new dog that you're going to get. Take care.